I see the stock market's up again today, 214 points. So you may look at your accountant. You're feeling rich enough to buy a car.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked to an expert on how to do this strategically, right?
Right, I did. I spoke to Kevin Brassler. He's the executive director, or actually the executive editor with checkbook.org, which is a nonprofit. And he says automakers are launching new models like never before. EVs, hybrids, and if you want one, it's going to cost you.
Cars being made right now cost $40,000 or more, and the reason is that manufacturers have recognized that they can sell right now pretty much every car they produce, so they may as well produce the more expensive one.
So you go into the auto dealer and you're like, let me just take the basic model. It's hard to find those basic models now. And he says because of this, consumers are falling into a financial trap.
Unfortunately, what a lot of consumers are doing is they're buying a car and then stretching out their loans for like 7 years.
He says the longer you finance the car, the more interest you're going to pay over time. But some buyers feel like they have no choice because they want a lower car payment. Brassler says buyers are stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to used cars now. He says buyers
end up having to go to the used car marketplace to find something that's more affordable, and that continues to put pressure on the used car market. It continues to prop up prices for used cars and make them more expensive than they really should be.
Brassler says
if you can afford to buy new, though, the good news is that there's more price flexibility, more price competition among dealers.
Because just a few years ago, manufacturers had the upper hand when it came to new cars. He says
people were buying cars that hadn't been manufactured yet, not to mention shipped yet.
But Brassler says that's not the case anymore.
For most, you can go in and dealers, because there are cars available on their lots waiting to be sold, there's competition among dealerships for your business, and that's good for you.
Yeah, and if you absolutely have to buy a new car, Brassler says, please do your research.
And then approach dealerships one by one and say, I want to bid from you for this car. You give me your lowest price. I'm contacting other dealerships, and you only get one chance to give me your lowest price.
And Brassler says, if you're going to do it, do that. Do it over the phone. Don't do it in person, because salespeople are good, okay? Yeah. So make the phone call. He says this creates competition, and now the dealers have to compete for your business.
That way you're forcing them to compete to sell you the car as opposed to, trying to go in and haggle, and you don't really know what their lowest price is going to be. As you said, well, you try to get $1,000 off, but maybe it's $3,000 off. You just don't know.
Brassler says if you can get your own financing before walking into the dealership, do it. And when it comes to the finance person asking you at the very end, do you want added protection?
One of the biggest ways is that we're constantly being, this barrage of marketing to get us to insure things that, we don't really need to insure. And especially in the case of cars, these extended warranties are horrible deals.
He says there are numerous loopholes and exclusions in those extended warranties. So don't pay more. Don't get it.
Well, that sounds like really good advice. I like the idea of basically turning it into an auction. But you got to do a lot of homework for that, right? Because the different options, packages on these cars are complicated, but it's worth putting in the work. Huh?
It is worth putting in the work. He says, make sure you know what car you want. You can always go to those websites, those consumer websites. They're going to tell you, what a car's worth, what they come with, what's the best, what's not the best, does it break down, are there recalls? You got to know all of that before you call the dealership. Don't go into the dealership, he says. Call first, speak to the manager, and say, you get one shot.
And they'll do that for you, huh?
I don't know, because
we're willing to negotiate over the phone.
What's really crazy is that before we bought the car that we have right now, I went into one dealership. I sat down. I said, this is my price. I'm not going any higher. And the sales guy looked at me and said, well, I'm sorry, we can't do business. And he walked away. And I just sat there going, but wait a minute, aren't you supposed to go back and forth with me? And he never did. And so then I decided, all right, this isn't my car. So I went and found another one, and they were amazing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if it depends, I guess, on which way the market is tipping. So if it's a seller's market, then they know that another customer is going to walk in the door who is willing to give them their price.
Right. But can you imagine paying on a car for 7 years just to get $100 off?
No, that'd be ridiculous.
Yeah, it would be.
Now, the question is, I don't know if you brought this up with him, is there an advantage to paying cash over stretching it out?
Yes. He says if you're going to buy Because the reason why this story came up is because my dear friend works for a bank. She's the VP of a bank here in Seattle. And she said, my goodness, people are buying cars. We're giving out car loans. And somebody came into the store the other day and wanted, or the bank rather, and wanted to finance a $100,000 truck. And she said, it's not my job to really tell people what to do, but I really felt like I needed to educate this guy and say, you know what, can you pay cash? It looks like you've got the money to pay cash. And the guy said, nope, I'm going to finance it. And she's like, why?
Yeah.
So if you can pay cash, I think that'd be a lot better. Brassler says, don't finance for 7 years.
You do get a tax deduction for the interest you pay, right?
On the car?
Do you?
I've never done. What?
No?
No.
Only if it's for business.
You
Okay.
do mileage. You can do mileage.
Yeah.
You can do oil changes. That's about it. But no, you can't write off the interest on your vehicle. I'm not a tax person, but Dave, I don't think that's true.
Time
Sorry.
to check your tax returns, Dave.
I know, right?